Welcome to today's webinar here with Quest Trust Company. I am super excited to have with us today Tom Olson joining us all the way actually from Gary, Indiana, to talk to you guys today about due diligence in your business and real estate investments. But before we get started, I do just have a couple of quick announcements for you guys, kind of as we let people get signed on here. In these webinars, we've noticed that we get a lot of new people joining us, or maybe it's been a while since you've attended some of our Quest events. So in these few slides that I have here, just going to give you guys a quick tidbit about who we are at Quest, how we can help you in your real estate investments, and also some of our promotions and upcoming events that we have planned for the next few months. So if it's your first time joining us, first of all, welcome. As we let people get signed on here, let us know in the chat where you're joining from. We get people join us on these webinars from all across the US, and I love to see where you guys are watching from. But when it comes down to who we are at Quest, at the core of our business, we are a self-directed IRA custodian. So we basically teach investors how to utilize their IRAs and old 401ks to invest into assets outside of the normal stock market and publicly traded securities that most Americans have their funds invested in. And, to be completely honest, those traditional ways of investing on their own, they really don't actually get you to where you need to be by the time you hit retirement. So at Quest, we are very passionate about teaching investors all across the US about how they can self-direct their IRAs and diversify their retirement portfolios outside of the stock market and invest your IRA into real estate, private entities, or promissory notes. And so you really have a lot of options out there. Physically, our offices are in Texas. Our corporate office is here in Houston. That's where I'm located. And we do have physical offices in both Dallas and Austin as well. But we do operate in all 50 states. We have about 20,000 clients nationwide. And again, we are very passionate about teaching investors all about self-directed IRAs, the things that you guys need to know to be successful in your IRA investments. And along with that, we provide a lot of education. As you can see, this disclaimer here at the bottom, this is super important. Please be aware that at Quest, we do not give tax, legal, or investment advice. We put on a lot of education. We bring in a lot of different guest speakers, but just please be aware to always do your own due diligence before you enter into investments. That's what we're here to talk about today. And make sure that you're taking the time to vet the people that you're working with and make sure that you're using the right professionals to really make sure that your deals are structured properly. Now that that's out of the way, let's get more into the kind of fun stuff. I did want to add this slide in here. Just a quick announcement for you guys. I know we get a lot of people that watch these webinars that are actually Quest clients. If you are a Quest client and you have not logged into your online client portal, be sure to go online and log in. You can just go to questtrust.com and then you'll click the login button there at the top right of the screen. We have a lot of new features that we've added to the client portal within the last year. You can generate custom statements for all of your accounts. You can see your IRAs as well as any IRAs that you might be an interested party on. And the most exciting thing that we have added recently to the online client portal is actually our QTC investment hub, where you can now actually upload all of your investment documents and the information that you would normally fill out on a form and kind of scan it into us. You can do all of that directly through the client portal now. It's a great feature. It updates in real time where your transaction is in the funding process. So if you guys have questions about the online portal, reach out to us, let us know. But if you have an account with Quest, this is a great tool that you can use to make sure that you're keeping up with your investments and get those documents submitted very easily. Now, this webinar is just one of many educational classes that we host here at Quest. We live stream all of these classes weekly on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And if you miss any of these live classes Or if you want to rewatch today's class, you can head right on over to our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is a fantastic resource. I don't know if you guys out there are on YouTube. It's a great platform for learning all about various different types of topics. And we have really put a lot of effort into growing the content on our YouTube within the last year. And there's a lot of great education on there that I would definitely encourage you guys to go check out if you are interested. Now, on our website, we also have articles, we have other self-directed IRA videos, and my personal favorite event that we host, at least at this time, is our virtual networking happy hour. We host it twice a month. We get about 50 investors from all across the US that join us, and everyone actually gets a chance to share their cameras, introduce themselves. We all have a drink together through Zoom. It's a lot of fun. And I will let you guys know that we officially are bringing back our in-person classes and events the first week of August here in Texas. Now, once we do that, we will continue to live stream everything online. We are actually in the process of revamping all of our physical equipment in our classrooms to make it just as engaging for you guys that will be watching online, even once they do come back in person. And we will continue to host that virtual happy hour online every month as well. Now, our biggest event that we have coming up this summer, this will actually be our last online conference for probably several months. So if you guys are interested in coming to join us for a high-level event, be sure to get your tickets to the Quest Summer Intensive. This will actually be 3 Fridays in a row. It's half days, so it's just in the mornings. And we have specifically asked all of our speakers for this event to bring a bit of a higher level presentation. So this will not be the basics event. This is going to be a deep dive into case studies, due diligence, and a lot of different other types of topics. And each day we will be focusing on real estate the first day. The second Friday will be all about private placement investments. And the third day will be all about note investing and private lending with your IRA. So we're really excited for this event. Be sure to get your tickets, and we'll be hosting that coming up here in the next few weeks. Also, this month we have a really fun, exciting, and a bit of a different promotion going on. You know, being in the banking industry, I've heard that giving away toasters is the really hot thing to do. Banks have done it for decades, and it almost became something that was expected. When you open up a new bank account, hey, where's my toaster? So that's exactly what we're doing this month. We are giving away free toasters all month long to anyone who opens up a new self-directed IRA here at Quest. They are real toasters. They have our logo on them, and we'll mail it to you. You can come pick it up in our office. And it's just a fun promotion that we have going on. And we have a really cute video on our YouTube channel as well. It's been really popular. So give us a call. We'll give you a free toaster. And we're excited to be hosting that promotion all month long for you guys. Also, really quick, we do have a referral program. If you guys have friends or family that could benefit from having a self-directed IRA and diversifying the investments that they hold in their retirement account, be sure to tell them about your experiences at Quest. If you've been able to, have some good experiences with your investments, if you've been able to grow your account through investments that you have more control over, be sure to share that with the people in your network, the people around you, and we will give you a $25 credit for every new person that you refer over to Quest. For more information about that, visit refer.questtrust.com, and you can actually input your information there, and we'll send you some more information about that referral program. Now, I know that was quick, guys, but I wanted to keep it fast so we can get right into today's main presentation. If you have questions, let us know. We are always happy to help here at Quest. You can schedule a free one-on-one consultation with one of our IRA specialists. You can chat live with an IRA specialist directly through our website, or just give us a call and send us an email, and we'll get all of those questions answered for you. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's main presentation with Tom Olson, again, joining us all the way from Gary, Indiana. Tom, it's great to see you. It's been a while, and I'm excited to hear what you've brought to speak to us today about due diligence. If you guys have questions, put them in the Q&A box, and we'll get them answered at the end. Tom, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Haley, for the introduction. Thank you so much for having me on. I really do appreciate all of everything that Quest does. And I've actually gone into some of that YouTube library myself and even watched some of the things from Jeff Watson, some of the older things from Quincy. Like there's some really great information in there. And I would highly recommend you guys go through that. One thing as I'm thinking about when we're doing this right now is I want a toaster oven. I mean, I guess I have to open up a new account, Haley, in order to get a toaster oven. But
I'll put in a good word for you.
yeah,
We'll see how the class goes.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a collector's item at some point, and it's going to go at auction for $1 million or something down the road. I mean, it's like crypto; it can be worth nothing and then still be worth something. I don't know. Sorry to offend any of those crypto investors out there, but anyways. I actually do own crypto, so it's not like it's like the worst thing in the world. But anyways, I do want to thank everybody for having me on. I have a lot of great friends in Quest with from Quincy. Quincy's I love Quincy. If you guys have never met him, you guys really need to get to know him. Great guy. Love Quincy. Nathan, Rebecca, Haley, all the whole team there that you guys got at Quest is just top notch, and you guys put on some really good education, and that's what I really do love about you guys. So I'm going to get started a little bit. Quest Trust Company, has meant a lot to me. I have, learned personally from Quincy, and it took me a while to kind of get started in IRA investing. But this presentation today is going to be somewhat short. It may only be 35, 40 minutes or so. But we'll see. Sometimes I can go off in some rabbit trails and maybe it'll be a little bit longer. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am and what we're doing. And then from there, I'm going to get into a little conversation we had at a family office event about due diligence, not just on a person, but on the company. Because most of the time when you're doing a deal with somebody, in your IRA, you're normally not loaning money. You're normally not buying. You're normally not investing in maybe, a fund to an individual. You're normally investing in the company itself. And we were having a conversation kind of about, I think we called it amateur hour, like how to kind of spot an amateur when it comes to certain things and what things can kind of just pop out at you that you didn't really think about until you kind of had a conversation with a group of other investors. And I'm not talking about the handshakes. I'm not talking about the live events that we used to go to. And, a word for live events. I can't wait for them to come back. I really did miss the live events that Quest used to have, and I'm hoping that they're going to be coming back soon. We're actually going to do a live event here in Gary, Indiana, in October. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. It's not really a big push. We already have 80 people that are going to be here, and the room is going to be full. We can only take 100, so I'm not really concerned about filling the room. But I love live events, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about later with the due diligence, I think the live event, the handshake, the breaking the bread, the getting to see people's interaction face to face, some of that can kind of soften some of this. But when you're talking to somebody you don't know, it's really good to kind of have a checklist or have things that like in the back of your mind are just kind of, you're mulling over, you're looking for these red flags that might be a red flag. And I thought some of these are kind of funny. So I thought, hey, why don't we just put a presentation together and share it with you guys? And I kind of added some more of my own that I look for when I'm doing investments in my IRA or even outside the IRA. But either way, I think it'll be good for you guys. So, I've got two big dreams in my life, and I love to express these to everybody when I get a chance to speak. That's my beautiful wife, Becky. We've been married for almost 24 years now. Yes, we got married when we were 13. I know everybody's laughing, but I've got two big dreams in my life. One is to give away $1 billion. And the other is to flip the city of Gary, Indiana. It's where I sit right now. That my office is in Gary, Indiana. And what I mean by flipping is that I want Gary, Indiana to become a place where people move to instead of away from. And I want businesses to thrive and want to be here. And over the last 20 years, it's been kind of a negative. It's been kind of a hard place. And I think even a couple of years ago, it was in one of the magazines, maybe one of the worst places to live or something. I think in the 80s, we got dubbed like the crime capital of the year, murder capital. But it's been so long since that happened. And really, there's not that much murder and not that much, for per capita, even it's not even any close to Chicago, Detroit, even Houston or some other cities that, we have around the country when it comes to that. So even though we've kind of have some of those bad stigmas, but in the 2000s, we had two unnatural, really, things that happened in that same decade, which normally never happens. And one was we had tax reform in 2003, where a typical rental property would have been a property tax of about 800 went to like 10,000 overnight. And it was crazy. And then since then, just so you guys know, I mean, it's normalized and kind of gotten back to what it should be. But that kind of really messed up the whole investment world in Gary, Indiana. And then if that wasn't enough, 2008 happens and everybody has their horror stories about 2008. So I've got a long story that I won't belabor people with today about why I want to flip Gary. Some of it's personal and some of it's, dear to me. But those are my two goals. And everything I try to do in my life, I want to either help me reach one of those two goals. If you do want to interact with us, I do have the Good Success podcast. We're still putting out podcasts every month or every couple of weeks. We have about 250 already on the podcast platform there. It's a good place to interact. Or if you're interested in single family rentals, we have the Active Turnkey podcast. And that's a pretty active podcast with me and Jared Stoltmeister, who runs Olsen Group, my turnkey rental company. Again, we get kind of in the nitty gritty of things, and if it's a good place to be able to have more education. This is kind of my process when I buy homes. So Apocto Homes is kind of our company that it's not even really a company. It's more of just a brand that we use to advertise, to buy houses. We buy in Olsen Group. I'm also a licensed contractor in 4 different cities and 3 different counties and all these other cities, all the other towns and stuff around our local area. And then we have Olsen Property Services, which is the property management company. So that's kind of, we buy a house. Typically we will fix it up. We will rent it. And our rehab standards are quite a bit higher than most turnkey rentals. We put granite countertops and everything, luxury vinyl plank. We try to make sure it is, as good as it possibly can, because we're not just trying to make money. We're trying to raise the standard of a community. And that's important to me, is to kind of not just think about what the community can do for me, but what I can do for the community. And I think raising the value of properties doesn't just give a gift to the tenant that might have a better property, but it gives a gift to the entire neighborhood. Because if you raise the entire neighborhood's prices by, say, $5,000, you just gave, maybe a $200,000-$300,000 gift to that neighborhood. So it's pretty important to me, the way we do things. Me and my wife have a company called Sarah Joe Corporate Rental. Sarah Joe is actually from my late mother-in-law, who passed away a couple of years ago. It was her name, but we love the Airbnb market. We have about 15 of these. We also do corporate rentals, and we manage a couple people. It keeps us super busy. And this is just in our neighborhood. This is not like in some luxurious vacation rental place. This is just a standard, Northwest Indiana. We do have some lake rentals on close to Lake Michigan, up in Miller Beach. But for the most part, these are typical standard houses. This house that's in this picture right here is down the street from our office. And a lot of times corporate rentals will go to traveling nurses or people like that, or the Airbnb market. And the way I look at it is I'm just competing with the hotels. So if I feel like if I can add a better value than the hotel can, that's what we do. This is a company that we just started this year called Conduit Capital. And what I do is we have a lending company where we connect lenders with borrowers, and then we kind of try to help vet the deal and try to help people with that. So with that, like, I've learned a lot about how to vet deals, how to vet other businesses, and that's kind of what I'm going to talk about a little bit today. And so again, this is that kind of process. I have a couple statements that if you hear me speak, or if you've heard me speak in the past, I love to say. I believe we've all placed on this earth for a purpose, and that purpose is never really to fulfill our own selfish desires. I think sometimes people think that we're supposed to be here to have a house on a hill with a pocket full of $100 bills. And I just don't think, I think that's kind of a very empty purpose to have a vacation. It's fun. It's great, but I think it's all going to die at some point, and it's not really fulfilling. So I believe that everybody's placed on this earth to work, to have, to give, whether it's your time, whether it's your talent or your treasure. I think we all have a purpose, and that's always ends up with a person. Some person, I believe God's placed in your life, a group of people, or maybe several groups of people, that you were designed uniquely to be able to help. And sometimes it's money, which I think is the case for me. Like, I really do want to push money towards people, that need it. Some people, it's talent. Some they have a talent, a niche to really be able to help certain people. I think God's given me that a little bit with being able to help investors. It could be time, talent, treasure. Any of those things could be what you've been given to be a conduit for. So that name Conduit Capital means a lot to us. There are many ways to work with us. We do, like I said, have the turnkey rentals. You can learn more about that at the Active Turnkey website, or at buyolsengroup.com, or by our podcast. And then we also, obviously, a lot of people do loan money to our company as we're fixing up houses and we're selling them. You could also work with Conduit Capital. And I also am a business consultant as well. I have 7 companies, and I've got 7 different asset managers and asset leaders that run those companies for me. And I've kind of learned a lot about structure and a lot about helping people with that. So I do that as well. Don't do it too often, but it's something that you can work to me. I talked already about the work to have to give, be a conduit, not a bucket. So I'm not going to belabor that at all, but I do have a trip coming up that I'm really excited about. I hope we can still do this. We're going to probably know by January. I know that there's been some tensions over there in Israel, but we actually had planned this for 2020, and it obviously got canceled. So we're trying to reschedule this, but we already have about 18, 20 people that are going to do this trip to Israel with us. If you are a Christian, or even if you're not, and you want to see Israel, you want to see the Holy Lands, you want to see the different sites, I promise you it's a trip that you will never forget. And I've got a lot of people that already want to go. We can only take like 40 people. It's not a big deal. It's not a huge, offering. But if you are interested in it, it does include all this round trip international airfare and your meals and all that good stuff. But price is $39.99 based on double occupancy. So if you guys are interested in that, you can just go to goodsuccess.com/promised land, and just know that the dates are November 28th through December 8th, 2022. But just so you know, when you're doing Israel, you have to book these things like way in advance. So by January of next year is when we really need to know if people are going. And I think by then we'll have a good idea of what's going on over there in that area. So to today's topic, due diligence on business and on investments. And a lot of people out there, if you're listening to this, you probably have an IRA. And so I'm going to try to, cater this, or kind of mold this little talk on actually specifically your IRA a little bit. But just so you know, I am involved in a lot of business transaction. I'm involved in the property management. I'm involved in selling rental properties. And even me as a provider, I use some of these myself when I'm dealing with clients. Now it's not as stringent, but I have learned that I don't even want to work with everybody out there. And to be honest with you right now, I'm not even really out promoting my business and on this webinar. Like, I'm not even really showing, hey, I want everybody to work with me. I want everybody to buy turnkeys from me. I want everybody to loan money to me, because to just be frank and honest, like, we've built this up over the last 10 years, and I have a network. I have about 500 investors that we already work with, and it's hard to even keep up with what we've got. So I'm not here today trying to drum up business for myself. I'm really just trying to give to the community. And I hope that will be received. And, people understand that this is not about me. I'm not trying to, prop myself up as some awesome, wonderful person. I've got flaws just like everybody else does, but some of this stuff is what I've learned. And some of this I've had to learn the hard way. So, sometimes when you learn something the hard way, you want there to be something good. You want to be that silver lining, that kind of comes out of it. And hopefully a little bit of that silver lining of some of my mistakes. And some of this is other family office and other people that have made these mistakes, or that have, seen some of these red flags. They've learned from those mistakes themselves. And I'll give you a quick example. And this is completely non-related, but it has to do with contractors, right? So I do own a construction management company. We do, about $5 million worth of business a year in that company. And it's interesting because we have a process. Our process when we are working with contractors, and maybe some of you guys can learn from this, and it's obviously off topic, but I think it's good when it comes to contractors. Our process with working with a new contractor is we rarely ever will give a new contractor that we've never done business with more than a $2,000 upfront down payment. Again, that's our process. Now, I can't expect, an investor that's only working with money to probably have that. And honestly, as a contractor, I won't accept those terms from an investor. But if I'm a contractor hiring a contractor, a new person, I never give up front more than $2,000. And I want to see some things. I want to see the permit pulled. I want to see how they do the first week. And then we break everything down in phases. And normally we kind of try to break it down in around $5,000-$6,000 in phases, each phase. So what we do is when we're signing up a new contractor, we show them our process. This is what we want to do. Your scope of work is going to be attached to their contractor agreement, which is a whole nother topic I won't get down today with your contract agreements. Maybe I should do a webinar on that because that is a really good topic and a good reason for you to have contractor agreements. But when we do that, like we show them, this is what we've done. This is what we do. You're going to get paid. We show them you get paid weekly as long as your phase is done. And every time, I shouldn't say every time, but occasionally we'll get these guys that think they're hot shots to a certain degree. And they come in, they're like, oh no, well, I'm different. There's a project that I'm thinking about right now. And we knew it was about a 4 to 5 week project. And this year, I'll be honest with you guys, materials have been tough. So if contractors are telling you that, they're not conning you. I understand materials, have prolonged a lot of projects this year. There's a lot of materials that's really hard to get in a lot of parts of the country. And I think our part of the country is actually a little easier than some of the other parts of the country. So I understand that. So we told the guy, hey, it's going to take a 4 to 5 week project. And he's like, oh no, I can get this done in 2 weeks. And then we're like, okay. So we actually called his references and we're like, hey, can this guy get this project done? And his references were actually pretty good. But he insisted on half down up front. And we're like, and we talked as a leadership team. I talked to the project manager. I talked to our finance manager. I talked to Jared, who runs Olsen Group. We went through the whole thing. And I'm like, hey guys, if you believe him, I'll leave it up to you. If you guys want to make that decision, but I just want to kind of, me and Chrisney, my CFO, we're kind of both saying, hey, just so you know, every time this has happened in the past, now maybe there's an exception, it's always turned out where it wasn't a good thing. And sure enough, we're now 2 months later into this 2-week project. And I mean, they're probably 2 weeks maybe from really being done, but hopefully you understand, you get my point, is that some of these red flags when it comes to contractors, we know what these red flags are. And when you're doing an investment, you definitely want to have some of these red flags that you're thinking about, you're looking for. Now, just because there's one red flag doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad deal, but it's something, hey, you might want to go down that trail a little bit and you might want to think about that. So I titled this Amateur Hour in the investment world. And I was sitting at a family office event and there was probably 100 people there. And there was almost just like a group conversation. And we were just trying to like pull out from the audience, hey, what are some things that if you don't know somebody, if you haven't had like this, 2 to 3 year, long-term communication, hey, do they do what they say they're going to do? Do they respond properly? Do they, give you an attitude? Just somebody you've just met, or maybe somebody that's been referred to you. How can you kind of spot those? And hopefully, again, I think some of these are funny and I think some of these are entertaining, but at the end of the day, I hope that some of these things will be helpful for you. So the first thing that came out was something that I just brought up with my contractor, right? It's the massive overpromising. And honestly, I cannot stress this enough. I don't care if it's a contractor, if it's a business, if it's a fund, if it's a note, somebody's trying to get you to loan money to them for a hard money loan, which a lot of us at Quest do. And again, I have a whole company that does that. I do this quite a bit. But I mean, this is something that I'm looking for. If somebody is massively overpromising, they're telling me all about the moon and how fast it's going to be and how like as soon as they close the next day, they're rehabbing and they can get projects done in 2 weeks. I've even heard contractors say they can get projects done, or developers, which is what I call them, people that fix and flip, or fix and flip. I've heard people say they can get these projects done in 3 days, and I'm like, okay. No, I'm not doing this investment. At this point, depending on how far they go with this massive overpromising, I might just shut it all down and just say, no, just send me an email. And let's just keep this conversation going on for a longer period of time. And honestly, I'll be honest with you, there's somebody I'm doing an investment with now. We've had an ongoing email conversation for about the last 5 years. And it took me 3 years to do my first little deal with him. And he actually performed, but it was partly, and I had to tell him, I'm like, hey, you're offering me like 25%. And I'm like, I want to let you know, for most people, when they hear that, like, there should be red flags. And if somebody's offering you 20% or more, and I'm just going to be honest with you, I think there should be red flags. You better go down that trail. You better, think about that a little bit more. And I had to kind of like hone him in a little bit. I think he was actually offering more than that. I think he might've been offering 50% or 100% or something astronomical. And I finally pulled him back and I said, hey, there's risk and reward. And if you believe it's that risky to pay that kind of reward at the end of the day, then fine. But like, what does that say about what somebody's actually investing in? So I can't stress this enough. Somebody who massively overpromises is somebody that, you should have a red flag for. This was kind of a funny one. And if somebody has a Gmail or worse, an AOL or a Yahoo email. And I actually still have a Yahoo email that I do use from, occasionally. I try to keep it more my personal email, not my business email. But when you're investing into a company and they haven't spent the $5 a month to get an actual, registered company email address. This was something I didn't bring up. I can understand a little bit both sides of this, and this is a little bit conversational. I was actually in a Facebook group that had a conversation about this. And again, if you know somebody and you've had broken bread with them, maybe this isn't, as big of a deal. But if somebody's a company and they are telling you that they're going to insure this investment and they're going to make sure that they take care of your money for you, and it doesn't matter what it is, if it's a fund or if it's a single family home that you're loaning money to, or if it's a REIT or if it's whatever it is, like, this is something that kind of came up. And I think there's obvious reasons why. My favorite is the old Hotmail or Juno or whatever, some of those that you still kind of see every once in a while. But honestly, like, I work with many investors and they're investors to our company, and they still have some of these. So I'm not going to say no to them, but this is just something that kind of came up in that meeting, kind of a little funny. This is another one, like, so credibility, like they don't have any website. They don't have any kind of handouts to be able to. And I think this conversation can kind of go both ways. If I'm an investor, I can use these as my points to kind of think, like, what am I looking for? What are the red flags? What are the things that I want to maybe make a checklist and kind of go through? And then also, if I'm a provider, if you are a fix and flipper, if you're somebody out there that's providing investment opportunities you're the deal maker, you might want to think about some of these items and think, hey, maybe these are some things that will help my credibility when I'm going out. Don't massively overpromise. Don't have a Gmail account. Like, go get your company name, at thatcompanyname.com. Create a website or have some kind of material that you can kind of, and I kind of felt like this one kind of more pertains to that group of people than the actual, investor, so to speak. But I do think that it's a checklist item for an investor. It's something that we do with our lending company. Hey, do you have a website? We ask them that right up front. A lot of fix and flippers, they don't have a website, and that's fine. But if it's a big company, if it's a fund, if it's something that or somebody that says they've been in business for 5, 6, 7, 10 years, like, maybe there should be at some point some kind of credibility. I can find them on Google, all those things. So think about that as another thing. Super long-winded essay writing. So this is something that I have actually fallen prey to myself personally, where somebody will they're almost like a keyboard ninja, and they're just typing off random emails, sending you emails all the time, telling you how much this is going to be so awesome and so great. And again, kind of going back to the overpromising, but really, like, those super long, they're not getting to the point. They're kind of like going around the bush a lot. So this was something that kind of came up, super long-winded essay writing. The next one, and I think this is something that none of us really appreciate, none of us really like, but when it's high stress, when somebody that you've never done business with says, hey, I need this money by tomorrow. I need it by in 2 or 3 days. Like, every single time when I'm working with people, and I get this quite often, hey, I'm closing next week. I've got to have the money by next week. I'm like, okay, well, our process says we need this much time. And, if it's an IRA investment, it might take a couple extra days to kind of get through that whole, process. And Quest is pretty good about that. They turn around their paperwork pretty quickly. And I appreciate Quest they've actually gotten really good at that. So I really do appreciate Quest for that. But so it may take some time to do some of these investments. So if it's high stress, if they're wanting you to commit on the first phone call, if it's those kind of high pressure sales techniques that people might use, that might be a red flag. this is something else that I've seen, and I've used this for a long time, but they refuse to say anything about the project unless they get you on the phone or unless you have to sign an NDA. And I kind of just feel like a lot of times there's these daisy chain deals. And I mean, for me, this is one of those things that I probably kind of like, an automatic X. Like I'm probably not some of these, if they don't have a website, if they have a Gmail account, like I might overlook those. I might go down the trail a little bit with them and try to ask some more questions and clarify. But when it comes to something like this, like there's a lot of times people are like, I'm not doing this unless you send an NDA. I'm like, I'm probably not going to sign an NDA for if you're just sending me a deal. So again, this was something that I didn't really bring up. This was something that was brought up in that family office group that I was a part of a couple months ago. But this is probably a no deal for me. The next one that we've got here is it has to be explained over the phone. So, they just can't type an email out. They can't send you any kind of pro forma. They can't really they don't have systems in place to be able to really do that. So, they have no other way to be able to do something. Whenever I hear this, this just has to be explained over the phone. It has to be a phone conversation. This is definitely amateur hour. This is something that I say, hey, it's a red flag. Okay, I've already kind of mentioned this a little bit, but daisy chain, I've been a part of some of these deals where there's 4 brokers between the buyer and the seller. That's just one of those things where honestly, and maybe some of you guys have been successful with it. I know many people that are in the middle of these, and that's their whole business is to create these kind of daisy chain. And if you don't understand what a daisy chain is, it's kind of like one person has the deal and they get under contract with somebody else who then gets under contract with somebody else. I mean, I've been a part of a deal where there was 5 buyers and it kind of went through 5 different people's hands. Even at closing, they kept buying an option or they kept buying the wholesale agreement, or maybe sometimes they've even double, triple, quadruple closed, a deal. And these are kind of deals that, again, you might do it once in a lifetime. Maybe it's fun to just do it, but these are things you probably should look for. And these are things that when I see, I'm like, oh man, most of the time I just say I'm out. Continuing on here. This is something that, I've only actually had a couple times, and it should be obvious, I think, but hopefully in a room like this of educated people that have listened to a lot of Quest stuff, they would know this. But I've got 9 projects. You've never talked to this person. They're all outlandish projects. We're doing this thing in the Caribbean island, and we got the sports team, and there's $1 billion project in Dubai. When you hear somebody that has these things, honestly, for me, that's probably too, even if it was real. And I know there's probably some people that are listening that maybe those deals aren't too big for them. And maybe those are things that they would like to do. But most of the time, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. And some people would say if it sounds too good to be true, it always is too good to be true. But to me, I would at least say most of the time, or chances are it's going to be too good. So, and really at most money is made. And I actually heard this at a Quest webinar. I think it was Jim Ingersoll that actually said it, not at a webinar. It was actually a live event. It was a Quest Expo a couple of years ago where everybody was talking about all these outlandish things they were doing with their houses and how they had to do these big rehabs. Most people, I'm just saying, most people that are even doing the big rehab, the big mansion houses, they're not doing so well. There's a couple people, trust me, there's some great people, and there's probably some people that are listening, or probably some people that you might invest with that are doing those multi-million-dollar houses, but that's not the norm. The norm is just I think I remember Jim saying, you know what, I've done pretty well on just the bread and butter cookie cutter houses. That's really where I think most of my attention is going to be, most of my money is going to be, and most of my focus is going to be. I want something normal. So even if it was true, I don't even want that. So anyway, so that's another, red flag I'd be thinking about. This is something that, I kind of wrote this down quick, but going from $0 to $1 million raised in capital for a $250 million to $1 billion deal. So if they're in those super beginning stages on a super large project, I'm kind of out. I want to make sure that, hey, if I'm putting in, $100,000 into some big deal or a couple $100,000 or whatever the case is, I want to make sure that I'm not that first person. Now, I'm willing to go first in. I've done Gary, Indiana. I'm not saying that I'm not willing to do it if I'm part of the deal, if I'm the deal maker. But if I'm going to go invest my money and I'm vetting on somebody else, if it's this massive, large deal and I'm in the very beginning stages of this, I probably want to wait to make sure that there's other people that want to invest in this as well. And I'm not, that it's super high risk capital. I'll just tell you that. And this is a great statement to look out for. This is the best deal you've ever seen. And I've probably heard this 100 times over the last, 15 or 20 years. This is the best deal you've ever seen. And, again, red flag. If somebody is overly persistent, too fast of a follow-up, or they're just annoying. This was something that kind of everybody laughed about at the group, but somebody who's just emailing you, texting you, 10, 20 times a day, somebody who just like is on you. It kind of goes back to one of the other points where they're really like just getting on you. They want you to commit. They're really pushy. But if they're over persistent, if they're following up way too often, again, like they should have other things that they're doing. If they're really worthy of my money, if they're really worthy of what I'm wanting to do, and if I'm wanting to help them, they should have other people involved. They should have other processes involved, and they should have things to do other than to just email me all day. And then, so these are just a couple more before I kind of get to what I wanted to add to the list. So these were all kind of brought up in that family office meeting I was talking about. Not being respectful of time. And I haven't heard this quite often, but there has been, I've heard it a couple times myself personally, but let's take a full day. And, I kind of have both sides of this. I think that there is two sides of it. If you do have a full day and you can fly out to somebody's office and you can visit with them and you can see for your own eyes, I highly recommend that. I really do. But if it's a local person and they want you to like spend a whole day with them, if it's somebody that's just like, or if they want to be on the phone for hours on end to try to like explain a project or try to explain what's going on, like this is something that they're just not being respectful of your time. So think about that. Again, like so we sell turnkey rental properties. We buy houses, fix them up, super nice. We put good tenants in there and then we rent them. And I recommend, I don't make everybody do it, but I recommend, hey, you should come out and at some point you should spend a day with the property management team, with Jared, with our office staff, with everybody else. It's going to really make that turnkey rental work out for you in the long run. And I do think, and I've done this myself, if I'm going to work with somebody, I actually want to, if it's a big deal, if it's just kind of like, okay, I'm going to loan money, I may not do that, but I might. But if I'm going to own property, if I'm going to getting deep in the certain market, like I really want to, dig that relationship a little bit deeper from that perspective. But I don't want somebody else like making me say, hey, we can't do this deal unless you spend this whole time with me. So be respectful of your time. If you're a provider and use that as kind of a little bit of a red flag, says, let me tell you a little bit about our company or deal, and then speaks for 10 to 15 minutes straight with no pause. Now, this is something that I've even had to tone back. As you can tell, I kind of get excited. And when I'm talking, many things come to my mind and my mind just keeps circling around and I'm wanting to get to those points. But this is something that I've even had to bite my tongue a little bit and just stop and think about, hey, what does the client want? What does the person want that is really helping that I'm trying to help? Because really, like, both people are helping each other. If you're a developer or if you're the deal maker, you should be thinking, how can I help my investors? And if you're an investor, you should be thinking, how can I help the developer? How can I be an asset and we can work together? And it can be a true win-win where both people feel like they got, something out of this. So this is something that we, for sure, I gotta work on a little bit. And I think I've gotten better about this and I've taught this to my team. And part of our first thing is we'll take 15 minutes. And most of that first 15 minutes, we have a first phone call conversation with somebody that wanting to work with our company. Jared's just really asking them about 10 questions and we want to hear what their goals are and how, and then think how maybe I can service this person and maybe I can't. And really at the end of the day, that's okay. This kind of goes into that. So not having the patience to listen first. So again, craft a custom approach and add value first is kind of what I just said that me and, we've worked on with our companies. And, we have kind of our list of these questions and it kind of helps us customize. Hey, if we're going to work with somebody, first of all, I want to be kind of choosy about who I work with, even if they're an investor. and I'm taking their money. But on the flip side, like I do want to make sure I'm providing value. And there are some people that it doesn't matter how good you are. There's some people out there that you really just can't add as much value to as you can others. So, knowing that niche and knowing, who you're really targeting and who you can really add the most value to is really super, super important when it comes to raising private money or on the flip side, like to make sure that there's value that you can even add as a lender. Because if it's just money's a really cheap value right now. So these are some things that I added to this list personally that I've always used to kind of vet people. I really honestly want to know what people's processes are. And maybe it's just my weird brain that thinks a little bit in process. As soon as somebody tells me this is what we're doing, I want to go from, okay, what's the beginning of the process? What's the end? What are all the steps in between? And what are the what ifs? And what are the things where if this, then that, so I think very much so in process. And I know it's kind of weird. Some people hate processes. They don't really want to go through that. And I know even myself, it's hard sometimes to follow the process every time, even though, I think they're really good. But, knowing that a company has a process, I'll give you a great example. When somebody works for us, we immediately will send them, like if somebody says, hey, I want to loan money to your company, we will immediately send them our process. Like, this is what you have to do. These are the 15 steps that will happen throughout this entire deal. And then this is our typical, if you're loaning to us in Indiana, this is the typical note. This is the typical mortgage that you're going to see if you do a deal with us. And kind of just knowing, hey, this is who you work with. What are the roles and responsibilities within the company? And this is the process that I'm going to go through. So knowing if I'm investing my money in somebody, knowing that other people have thought through this and they're proactive and they have these processes, to me, it's a very important thing. And this is something that maybe as a newbie investor, most newbie investors are not going to have. And this is kind of why it's called amateur hour, because they might be amateur. You might still loan them money, but if somebody has processes, this is something that kind of raises the bar for me. And like, ooh, I want to work with that person, and I'm going to push myself to work with that person more that has those processes in place. This is something that I think is another thing. Just like processes, they have nobody else in their organization that knows anything about their investment or how to help you complete the transaction. And again, like, I'm not trying to brag on my company. I'm just trying to use this as examples. When you work with our company, you rarely ever deal with me. I am always going to send you to Jared, or I'm going to send you to Cheryl with the property management, or Heather if they're going to loan money for me, or Adam if you're going to work with Conduit Capital. To me, it's very important, even as the owner, from managing a company standpoint, to have those other people in place, because I know how valuable it is. But if I'm loaning money to other people, I want to see, hey, do they have processes and do they have roles and responsibilities? Who am I going to work with? I need to know that up front. Who would I work with? And it's assuring to me when I can pick up the phone, if I can't get a hold of that one person for some reason, that I can get a hold of somebody else, and somebody else in the organization has not just been there long enough to be able to push paper, but also to be able to answer questions, and also to be able to run the process without that one person that's like basically, the caveat, or the person that's like the single point of failure in that whole thing. I think this is a very important piece. And I think I love working with people that have other people on their staff that, again, not just people on their staff, but people that know about how things work. This is something that kind of just came up recently. I was at an event and I was talking to a guy, and he was like, I don't know. I just do anything that makes money. And I just thought to myself, my goodness, like it's kind of honestly, it's a little bit arrogant, I think. And I think it's just stupid. I don't know how else to say it. It's just plain stupid. But people that say stupid things like, I'll just do anything if it makes money. I'm like, I don't know if I want to put my money in that person's bank account if he's just going to do anything to make money. I want to know that he knows what he's doing. I want to know that this isn't just the first time that this guy's done anything in this realm and in this type of, environment and for this type of investment. So again, like, this is a big red flag to me when somebody says, they pop their mouth out. And I know we all are probably guilty of this to a certain degree, of saying things that maybe we wish we wouldn't have said. But at the end of the day, like, that's something that is a big red flag for me. They try to have you use paperwork that does not protect you. And I think this is very, very, very important. Always looking, when I drafted up my original notes and mortgages that we use, I sat down with one of my investors and my attorney, and we both walked through the thing ourselves. And we said, hey, I want to make sure that, hey, the person has the right to foreclose on me. I want to make sure that I have some rights in here too. And you know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't be such a one-sided document. And I'll give you a great example. If you look at most wholesale documents, if you're a wholesaler, and I'm guilty of this as well, even as a wholesaler, at times I have wholesaled about 1,400 properties in my lifetime. When we were buying a property, that document was pretty one-sided. Like, we had all the rights in the world. We could get out of the contract whenever we wanted to. And then when we sold, a lot of the rights kind of was on us as well. It kind of flipped the coin. So if I'm going to put my money, though, into an investment, I want to make sure that there's equal protection in there. So just make sure, again, this is, and everything I'm talking about, make sure your attorneys, make sure your accountants are kind of looking at what you're doing. I want to make sure I throw that disclaimer out there. That's one of the two biggest relationships that you'll create as a real estate investor is your accountant and your attorney. And trust me, they will disagree often. We've heard that quite a bit, and even two attorneys will probably disagree often, but like, have those people that are at least on your side, looking out for your best interests, but try to mend those two of your accountant and your attorney. But, make sure the paperwork has you would actually agree to the terms that are on that paperwork. This is something that I kind of mentioned already, but it wasn't mentioned this way, but they never mentioned worst case scenario. And honestly, I put the reason why they don't do it, and they're so inexperienced. And I really believe that the reason why most people never mention worst case scenario, I don't think most people are really intentionally trying to rip you off. I do think there are some, and I've even been a part of some, and I've been in groups that there have been some that very intentionally and maliciously knew what they were doing, and very slick and very big personality people that have taken advantage of people. But I don't think that's the norm. I think the norm is that people just honestly don't know. They're too naive. They're too much of an amateur. They're too much of a beginner to understand it could really happen to them. And I think this is a good time to kind of point this out. If you're investing with somebody who did not go through the last crash, I think that's a whole nother thing to think about. Like, most of my money, I want to deploy with people that, like, I understand that they went through the last crash. They know how other ways to protect themselves. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't completely, invest in those, with people that just started in the last 10 years, but it's important to work with those veterans. And if they're not working with their veteran, they should have that attitude. They understand, hey, I didn't go through this last crash, and they should be open and willing to be able to listen to, hey, what are your suggestions when it comes to these deals? So they never mention worst case scenario. I try to take people to worst case scenario first. And if you as an investor can stomach worst case scenario, and if that happens, you would understand that, it was talked about up front. And that's not what we're planning. That's not the goal. That's not what we think it's going to happen. I rarely ever mention best case scenario. I get the feeling sometimes that people only mention best case scenario and they never mention worst case scenario, where with me, I try to focus on two things. What is the most likely scenario, and what is the worst case scenario? I probably try to not even go to best case scenario. So think about those things when you're vetting other businesses. There are some things to add to this that I won't get into because of time, but just making sure that, if you're honestly, when I loan money, so do give an example for lending, I will not loan to a person, an individual. I will only loan to an entity. So if that's the case, I have to understand, I need to vet that business. I need to make sure that the company has company docs. They need to send me those company docs. They need to be willing to send me their articles of incorporation, their bylaws, make sure they're in good standing with the Secretary of State. You can look them up and look that company up on the, Secretary of State's website. These are all things that, like, when you're vetting a deal, you can't just look at the house. And you can't just look at the return. Everybody gets sucked in with that great return. Like, that is the worst thing you can take. I would rather make 10% of my money and know that the person that's securing it is going to pay me back no matter what. If he has to sell everything and do whatever he possibly can to pay me back, then he will, than somebody that's riding high on the hog and just thinks that he's a know-it-all and nothing's ever going to go wrong because eventually something is going to go wrong. So if they can't provide data, show you that their product, that their people, that their processes have merit, that they have experience, that you're just not like investing in some new person that's never done something. And if you are investing in a new person, which kind of our Conduit Capital does from time to time, we like to be a part of that process. We like to help them. If somebody tells me a bathroom remodel is going to cost $2,000, I'm like, it's not going to happen. Like, it's going to be at least $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000. You don't remodel a bathroom. Which kind of brings me to my last couple points before I kind of close things down and give you my information. I think some things that big money does that we should pay attention to that I think is really smart. And I've actually learned this from Richard Wilson. And I think he's been on on your guys' platforms as well. Is when you're doing a deal. Two things I think you should be looking at, and this is kind of more mindset. This is a bigger picture than these little, checklist things. But the most successful things that you can invest in are things that you can personally add value to. Know the value that you're actually adding to this. Is it just money? If it's just money, that's fine. But just understand it's just money, and money's super easy right now. Money is the easiest piece of the whole puzzle today. So many people, we know that I think it's 20% or more of all the United States dollars that have been printed in the last year. I mean, so money is becoming worth less day by day. That's really the crash that I think is coming. And we're actually experiencing that right now. We're experiencing the crash of the dollar. And we think that things are great because prices of housing are going up, but also so is price of lumber, so is price of labor, so is price of food. Everything is going crazy, but the dollar's crashing. So understand that, if it's just money, that's okay. Money is needed for a project, but the best deals are those deals that can be synergistic with the other deals that you're doing. How can maybe you have connections that you can help connect to this group of people that you're going to work with? Or maybe you have a business that can benefit from a business that somebody else is working with, or maybe you can own, and I don't want to use the word monopoly. It's kind of, like a harsh word. It sounds bad, but if you can have a little bit of a monopoly on a certain area or a certain, an example, some of the family office people that I know, they own one of the thoroughways through one of the rivers over in Asia, and nobody can get through that river until they go through their little checkpoint. So think about that. They have a monopoly on that river. You don't get through there unless you pay them. So think about those chokeholds. How are those things? What can you do to be able to create those opportunities for yourself? And you're not just doing deals willy-nilly. You're not just doing every single thing that comes your way. You're not trying to make it work. You should never be trying to make a deal work. You should try to make sure that the deal works. And I think if you can make it synergistic to the other things that and your knowledge and your connections, there's things that you can add to deals. And when you can do that, it really turns out where you're not just offering money, you can offer help, you can offer advice, you can offer connections, you can offer, like I said, skills, maybe even, or, previous experience. Those are things that I think at the end of the day, if you are focusing on that, you're going to end up with good deals. That's it for today. I actually went a little longer than I thought I would. But I still have a little bit of time for questions. If you do want to get in touch with me, I am on Facebook. I am on other social media, but Facebook's what I'm on most often. You can also reach me at goodsuccess.com at the website and byolsengroup.com. And there is my personal email. You will get in contact with me if you do email me at tolson@goodsuccess.com. One more quick thing before I go. And I'm going to leave this screen up just so people can get that if they want it. But one more quick thing. We do have an event in October, and this is not a push. This is not a sale because it's free. We actually are even calling it the Real Estate Free for All. Me and a friend of mine just started talking openly on Facebook one night, and it just turned into an event. I don't know how it happened. I actually used to have the Good Success Mastermind. I shut it down at the beginning of this year to really focus on the lending company and focus on the businesses. And, live events, as you guys know, with Quest have kind of suffered. And I just said, I'm not going to fight it this year. God's given me some really open, low-hanging fruit in other areas. I'm going to just go over what's obvious to me that's working really well. And honestly, the lending company is working amazing. I love it. Love that business. I'm also opening up a new market in Pensacola, Florida. But we've decided to have an event here in Gary, Indiana, and we're calling it the Real Estate Free for all. We have sponsors lined up to be able to sponsor the event that are paying for the whole event. So you don't have to pay for the event. It's October 8th through 9th or 8th through 10th. So October, it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If you want to be a part of that, you guys can just email me at tolson@goodsuccess.com or find me on Facebook, and I can connect you to the right people that want to be a part of that. So that's my give for the day. If you guys want, again, we're giving, and the event's not going to be super structured. It is going to be very open. I want audience participation. We're just going to hang out because I think we need it. We need to get back to live events. We need to get back to breaking bread and having some fun with each other. So that's it. That's all I got, Haley. So if you want to shut us down or however you want to ask for other questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Yeah, definitely. So we have a few questions here. I will let you know this first question I have is it's a little long. If you want to open up the Q&A box at the bottom, I'll read it out loud, but just so you can kind of read along there as well. And feel free if you want to leave your contact information up on the screen while we answer questions. Okay. Guys, I'm pretty sure Quest will be at that event in October. So be sure to register for that. You'll see us there. And I'm excited to travel out there and finally get to see you guys again.
Yes, that would be awesome. Hopefully you can come, Haley.
Yes. All right, perfect. So this question here from Randy, I do think this is a good question, even though it's a little long. He said, "Hi, Tom, great stuff. How best does a new or smaller scale real estate investor best address the big challenges of not being big enough or relevant to the general contractors to get the proper attention, priority, and access to constrained materials? Those that are willing to put in the hard timeframes and consequences in the contracts are so expensive that there is no room for profit on the deal, especially with the big spikes in REI competition and material costs." Do you have any insight for us here?
I love this question. And it's funny because it's not even really what the topic was talking about, but I did bring up and I do love answering construction questions because I started as a contractor when I was 12 years old. So like I have lived construction for almost 30 years now. Actually, it's been 30 years. I am that old. When it's the answer is simple, but it's not an easy answer. The real answer is just like I was actually just talking to my realtor who's helping me in Pensacola in my new market. And I gave him this exact answer to acquisitions. Like it's not easy right now to get houses at the price that we need to get them for, right? And the answer is simple, but it's hard. And the hard truth is if it was easy, everybody would be able to do it. It really is all about putting in the work. It is about creating that relationship. If you don't mind that, Randy, I really appreciate that question. If you will just email me, tolson@goodsuccess.com. I didn't promote any of my stuff. I'm just trying to add value. I really appreciate Quest and I love, being part of their community, but I do have a book called Contractors versus Investors. And I think that's everybody can buy it on Amazon if you guys really want to buy it, or you can go to our website, goodsuccess.com, and buy it. But I will send you, Randy, a copy just for that question. And I think that the book will probably explain in much more longer detail. And it'll really give you most of the points on my contractor agreement. So feel free to copy them or do use them as long as it works in your state and as long as your attorney's good with that. But really, it's a lot of mindset, understanding the value that you can bring to a contractor. Just like with an investment, like if I'm sending my money to somebody else, I want to try to add value to that person. I want to know the value. You as an investor, you have value that you can give a contractor, and you got to know what that value is. And then you also have to know, hey, the contractor also needs to make a living. The contractor also needs to put food on his table. One of the things that I'm super passionate about that I get super angry about is when I see real estate investors, honestly, taking advantage of contractors. Like it is a real thing. Like they really don't think that contractors have a right to make any money on a project. And now, do I think that am I going to hire the retail contractor that's going out and, charging $350 a square to do a roof? No, like that's not my guy. Like those guys have already gotten through the whole process of like figuring it out. What you've got to find is the people that haven't quite figured that out. And that's the value. You have to understand that's the value you can provide to them. You can show them, hey, this is our system. You got to have a system if you're going to provide a value to them. And you also have to know, like, the real value you bring is they don't have to keep marketing for projects. And now if you're a really small investor, that's a really hard value to add, but that's what I always stress to my team. Know the value you're giving to these contractors and let them know, once this job is done, if you do a good job, I've got another one that's going to be pretty quick right after that. And I pay quick, like I don't make you wait. You're going to get paid from me as long as you do your job. Now, if you don't do your job, we're going to have a problem, but as long as you do your job. But honestly, I believe there's more sleazy real estate investors that try to screw over the contractor than there even is contractors trying to screw over. Now, there is contractors that are screwing over investors. Don't get me wrong. They do exist. But I'll be honest with you, from my I'm on both sides, guys. I'm a contractor and I'm a real estate investor. I've lived this. I've been in this. This is how I got into the whole thing, was by being in this. If there's not more, there's just as many sleazy real estate investors that literally, will screw over a contractor than there are contractors trying to screw over investors. And that's pretty that's the whole reason why I wrote the book, is because I felt that. I felt both sides of that pull. And at the end of the day, it's all about value. It's about upfront expectations. It's about all the things we talked about today, really, in relating that to the contractor.
Awesome. Wow. What a great answer. I didn't even know you had an entire book over that. So Randy, great question there. I just have two more questions for you, Tom. We covered a lot of good content today, making sure you're vetting people, the things that you should be looking at to make sure the person you're potentially working with really has that credibility there to back them up. Now, are there any times that you have broken these rules, and did it ever come back to bite you?
Well, I told you.
Loaded question.
There's one in specific. There's one very specific that I will admit that was like a big no-no. I don't know what in the world I was thinking. And it happened probably 3 or 4 years ago, where I did not, and I don't think it was part of the slides, but I made sure I put it in there because it's so painful to me. I did not vet somebody's corporation. I did not look to see if, and actually it is a corporation, but the problem is the guy that I did the deal with wasn't even like on the corporate docs. So like that should have been even another red flag. And honestly, like something I didn't add that I would probably tell you to do as part of a checklist, just Google somebody. Like really, like if you just Google somebody, and this is something else I didn't do for this particular, person. I had talked to him so many times, and he was like the guy that I had also talked about, where he was like, emailing me every day. It was super high pressure, needed to get done, all those things. Like, and then at the one that would have stopped me if I would have known is I would have looked at his corporate docs. And when you look at somebody's corporate docs, make sure their name is on it. Make sure they have a right to be able to sign on behalf, and for many companies, they can just do a simple corporate resolution, and that's fine as long as they got that corporate resolution that gives that person that's, selling you or on this deal, or whatever it is, that they have the right to be able to mortgage. They have the right to be able to assume debt on behalf of that company. Even if it's the owner, they still need to have that. My name is on all of those docs for all of our companies as well. So good question. It's a painful question to admit, but I will admit it. And that's why I wanted to make sure I brought that out in the presentation, even though it wasn't on the slides.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. And every time you make a mistake, if someone else can have the opportunity to learn from it, it's life. You live and you learn.
Yes.
Last question of the day for you here. If you had any last one kind of final piece of advice for our audience out there, what would you like to leave them with today?
Absolutely. And I get asked this question all the time, and it's not just when it comes to IRAs, but I answer it the same every time. And I built my whole personal financial freedom, and I do believe in personal financial freedom. I have a whole nother book on that, and I have an active turnkey book that talks about financial freedom as well. But I built a whole personal financial freedom plan outside my IRA. And so that's one of those things where it's like, if somebody's asked me, what are these mistakes that you've made that you wish you could go back and change? That's it. Like, so now I'm kind of going back and rebuilding a whole separate, personal financial freedom plan inside my IRA, and really focusing on the tax benefits, really focusing on the generational wealth that can be created. Even my kids' Coverdales and ESAs, and really we got lucky. Our whole family got, inherited Roth IRAs pre this new law. So like I'm working on building those for our family, but it's a big deal. Taxes are probably one of the biggest things that will contribute to hurting and destroying your wealth. And it's one of those things that we don't see, like we don't understand it. We don't until like it's shown on you on a graph. It's like math. Math is one of those things that it's a silly thing. It's the same. It's going to be the right answer, and it doesn't change. Like its laws like don't change because our feelings we feel a certain way a certain day. And so that's one thing I would love to even especially say on this webinar is, build a personal financial freedom plan. Figure out what it is that you need in order to live on, and do as much as you can of that in your IRA. Now I know, or in your self-directed accounts, like figure out how to be able to build that inside your IRA. I make passive income outside my IRA still to this day. And it's great. It's awesome. Don't get me wrong. But every year I pay the tax man, and I'm like, man, if I would have focused 10 years earlier on the IRAs, it would have been a completely, and I'm only 44. So it's like, I got a lot of time to still build these IRAs. Don't get me wrong. But even going to some of the Quest webinars and seminar and the cruises we went, I've been going on cruises with Quest for many, many years. It took me about 2 years to kind of like jump the gun and really make it happen. I'm so glad I did. And I would recommend for everybody that's out there, don't just do it yourself, but make sure your family's involved, your kids, teach your kids how to do this. And even like you're older, like it's a good time to even get your parents into a regular Roth IRA, maybe that can be inherited down the road. So think about that. And if it was me, that's one thing I would tell everybody.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, Tom. Well, that was fantastic, guys. I did not tell him to say that.
No, she didn't.
But it's so true. Start today, start making the plan, because 20 years from now, if you didn't, you really are going to wish that you did. And it's not about you right now. It's about your legacy, the long-term wealth, the rest of your family. And I think that's so important to touch on. So Tom, that was a great point to leave us off with for the day. Thank you for joining us. It's been great to see you again. And guys, be sure to check out some of his other resources, several books, that event coming up in October, goodsuccess.com, T Olsen at goodsuccess.com. Reach out to him. Got a wealth of knowledge for you guys. So Tom, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And hopefully I'll see you again here soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Haley.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Have a great day, everybody.